Hi, everyone. It is right at 10 o'clock, and so we're going to go ahead and get started. I hope you're all here to learn about the new org chart feature in ConnectCarolina. This is, before the basketball game starts at 2:45, so I hope I'll have you out of here before then. So in the room today, I'm Jackie Treschel. I'm on the ConnectCarolina Change Management team, and I have Rajani Day, who's a senior BA with HR in here, and our moderator who will be taking your questions is Chris Minner. He's also on the ConnectCarolina Change Management team. And so the format for today's webinar is going to be a presentation, and then we'll have question and answer at the end. You can use the chat window during the presentation to type your questions, and we'll answer the questions during question and answer segment in the order that they're received. So you can ask your question anytime and know that we won't forget about it. Chris and Raj are checking those as we go. And so the webinar is also being recorded, and it will be posted on CC Info on the HR Reps page after today's webinar. So let's get started. So our agenda for today, we're going to talk about the new feature, which is the org chart viewer link, and show you how to use it. And then we're going to talk a little bit about why reporting structure matters in terms of using the org chart viewer and what you can do if you notice that things are not the way you expect them to be. So moving in, excuse me. So the new feature is under the HR Work Center. So I'm assuming most of you are familiar with that. So you navigate to the HR Work Center, and then org chart viewer link is under the job data link in that top section. And so what can you do with it? That's a good question. You can see the reporting structure for employees. So it's great because you can see both up and down. And you can change the focus of the org chart to move around in there. And so we'll talk a little bit more about how you do that as we get into this. You can also see the email address, work phone number, and business address for the employees in the org chart. You can export it to Excel as a list. So for example, if you need to email somebody, everybody in a certain reporting structure, you can export it to Excel, get their email addresses, and then send the email that way. And you can also export it to Visio as an org chart. So if you have the Visio capability on your computer, you can do that, and then you can work in there as well. So let's talk about just a few things to keep in mind. The big one is that the org charts only show active employees in the reporting structure. And I know you're like, well, of course it does. What does that mean? The big thing is that it means vacant positions aren't shown. So if you have vacant positions in your department, in your reporting structure, they're not going to show on the org chart. It's just going to show the people that are actually active. And also inactive positions aren't shown. So if you have a position that that's been inactivated, it's not going to show up on the org chart because there's not a person in that position. And then if you have an employee that isn't in a position, so specifically thinking in terms of like faculty that have appointments and not positions, and that employee reports to someone who's not in a position as well, the org chart is going to show that employee as reporting to all of the supervisor's jobs. So you may have some faculty that their org chart looks a little bit wonky, for lack of a better term, because it's showing all of the supervisor's information across all of their jobs. And then the last thing to keep in mind is that only UNC Chapel Hill employees are included in the org charts right now. And what that really means is that UNCGA is not. So let's take a look. I mentioned it's under the Work Center, and there's the org chart viewer link. And a best practice tip with this is that after you click the link and the search pulls up, you're going to want to close the Work Center so you have more space to view the org charts. What happens is the way they are on the screen, it looks a lot better and a lot cleaner if you go ahead and close the Work Center. So then you get a search bar. So we're going to talk a little bit. It looks like, well, there's not a whole lot of information there. How much time could we actually talk about that? But there are a couple of things on this screen that I just want to point out to you. The first is that you see it says company directory and the breadcrumbs at the top. That is the org chart viewer. That is just PeopleSoft's name for the org chart viewer. So it's going to say company directory up there. One other thing that I just want to point out here is when you pull up your person, and you're not going to see the breadcrumbs in the rest of the screenshots that I have here, but you'll notice it when you do your org charts, is when you pull up the employee, their entire reporting structure all the way up to the chancellor shows in the breadcrumbs at the top. So you'll see all of that information in the breadcrumbs. So if you've got questions about what you're seeing, you can look at the blue bar and look at the breadcrumbs. The other thing is advanced search. If you wanted to search for all the employees in a department, or search for an employee by department or location or something like that, you can click on that and get more options than just a name. And so you can use that there. And then there's also my org chart. So if you just want to see you yourself as the focus of the org chart, you can click that and that will bring it up. And part of that reason is that this is intended for sort of self-service use and not so much on the HR side as the org chart. So you're able to just pull that up quickly and see that. So using the org chart viewer, you type in a name here. So we're going to use my fictitious Andrew Trainson here, and then you're going to click the search button. And then this is what the org chart looks like once you've done that. You see that Andrew Trainson here in the center in yellow is the focus of our org chart. And you see up one level, so who his manager is, and then you see down if he's got direct reports. If we were looking at somebody that didn't have any direct reports, there would obviously be no down. It would just be up one level. And so we pulled up Andrew, but we really want to look at William because William here has a direct report. So you can click on the bullseye or the org chart link under their name, and that will change the focus. And so now you see that William is the focus of our chart. Again, you still see Andrew here, and you see that William's direct reports are showing down at the bottom. And you see that the manager never changed because William and Andrew were at the same level. Up on the top left, you see that there's a profile tab. You can click the profile and it will give you the name, further information. So their address, their phone number. Down at the bottom, you'll see it says HR details. It'll show you the reports too. So again, that's the manager. And then it says peers. So it's important to keep in mind that peers is the employees that all report to the same manager. So they may be at different levels in terms of positions, but if they report to the same manager, they're going to show up in that peers row. And then direct reports is the people that report to the person that you're looking at. So you can flip back and forth between profile and org chart by just clicking the tab at the top. So you see I'm back here on William's org chart. You can also see all of the information as a list. So if you click the list button, again, it's the same information. It's up one level and then down below. There are plus signs, negative signs, so you can open that up and expand that as you need to. And then in the top right corner, there's the export button. So the Excel icon is there, and that will give you the option to export to Excel as a CSV file or export to Visio as a CSV file. So if you export it to Excel, this is what the file is going to look like. Again, we're using the same names that we've just been talking about. And you can see that. And if you export it to Visio, once you open Visio, you can get something along the lines of the picture that I've got displayed here. So that's helpful if you need to put in vacant positions. So say William is not supposed to report directly to Joanne. In Visio, you can go in and add that vacant position if you needed to. So here we've got our spotlight. And the big thing is that, the org chart viewer is not perfect. It doesn't give you a full scope of everything going on in your department. But what it is showing is what's reflected in the system. And so because ConnectCarolina is the system of record for the university, it is showing exactly what's there. So it's showing who people are reporting to, who the supervisors are, that sort of thing, just so that, because that's what's in the system. So if a change needs to be made, it needs to be made in the system so that the reporting structure shows correctly. So let's talk a little bit about why reporting structure matters. So if the reporting structure isn't correct, here's a list of things the employee's manager can't do or can't see. The big one is right now we're coming up to performance management time, performance ratings, but the employee's manager can't enter their employees' performance rating because they don't see them in ConnectCarolina. They don't see any of their performance documents or their training records as well either. And the manager isn't going to receive notifications when an employee enrolls in a training session in ConnectCarolina. And they're also not going to see that employee in the Employees tab in Infoport. But the bigger thing here, I think, is that the wrong person then has access to see the employee's performance rating and training records. And someone other than the person that's supposed to sees that employee on the Employees tab in Infoport. And that tab, we all know, has biodemographic information. And that's protected information that we want to make sure that the right people are seeing. It also means that if it's not correct, that it's possible that the employee may not be seen in the org charts at all. And that has to do with the way the structure is set up. I mentioned at the beginning that inactive positions aren't shown. So if you have somebody that's reporting to an inactive position, that inactive position isn't showing on the org chart, and by default, neither are the people that report to that position. So when you pull up that person, you might not even see them on an org chart because they're shown as reporting to an inactive position. And then the organization display in Microsoft Outlook is incorrect. So you may have somebody that, is showing too many direct reports or not enough direct reports. And also, ConnectCarolina is going to notify the wrong supervisor when an employee enrolls or cancels a training session. So what can you do? So the big thing is, number one, you can look over your org charts and just make sure that they look the way you expect them to. You can do that in the system. You can download it to Visio and look at a bigger picture. I mentioned you can only see up one level and down one level, but when you export it to Visio, you can get a whole picture of your department, say. So look over those org charts and make sure that they are what you expect them to be. If they are not, you want to look in the employee's job record to see why. So here's a few of the scenarios that we can think of as to why they won't show up. So again, going back to a supervisor that's inactive in ConnectCarolina, or if the employee is reporting to the supervisor's secondary job, they're not going to show in the org charts. If the supervisor ID or the reports to ID field is blank, so basically in the system, it shows that they're not reporting to anybody. They're not going to show in the org chart. And if the supervisor is in a position, so has a position number, but the supervisor ID field is filled in instead of the reports to field, the employee may not show up in the org chart. If the supervisor is a temporary employee, they're not going to show up in the org chart. And if the reports to field is one of these three, if the position is one of these, it has one of these cases. So if there's more than one incumbent, ConnectCarolina won't stop you from having more than one person in a position, but Tim has a one-to-one relationship. So it really should just have one, it should be one person, one position. But there may be some out there that are not that way. Or the position is inactive.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Yeah, some of these scenarios might give you poor data when you're looking at the org chart. They're not all going to remove somebody from the org chart.
Okay.
These are more things to keep in mind in general.
Right. Okay.
When thinking about your reporting
structures. Okay. So that they may just show incorrectly,
yes,
as opposed to not showing up on there.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Or if it's a temporary position in the reports to field as well.
Right.
And then the last scenario is if the employee and supervisor relationship is in a loop. And so basically that's the employer reporting to the supervisor and the supervisor reporting to the employee. That's going to look a little wonky.
It's strange, but it's probably out there somewhere.
Right. Okay, so once you've determined why your org charts don't look the way they do, it's possibly one of these scenarios or something else. So what you can do then is make the changes in ConnectCarolina by submitting the correct EPAR. So if you need to change the reports to field, you're going to use the add or update position EPAR. And if it's changing the supervisor ID, you're going to use the edit existing job EPAR. And that's if the supervisor doesn't have a position. And I've got a note here that you might have to submit more than one EPAR based on your scenario. There's a mini guide on CC Info this morning. It's on the HR representatives page. It's called Working with Org Charts and Reporting Structures. And it has a page in there about what to do if you notice something's wrong. So if the reports to field is wrong, what you need to do. And then if you've got to make a change from one field to the other, how to deal with that as well. And of course, once you've done that, after the EPAR is executed, you want to check your org charts the next day or sometime after the next day to make sure that they look the way you expect them to look. And you can figure it out that way and go from there. And that's it. So that's the bulk of working with org charts and understanding the reporting structure. And as much as I'd like to think I hit everything, something tells me I didn't, and we probably have some questions.
We do.
All right.
A couple, and I think some of these might have already been answered, but I'll go ahead and read them all off just to make sure everyone's clear. So first question is, will we ever have the ability to see vacant positions?
So we have turned on Org Chart Viewer as the software provider has delivered it. And currently, vacant positions are not displayed. It is not a feature that we can turn on, but it is on the list for our software provider. It is something that a lot of the users are looking to see. So I do believe they're going to add this feature in the future. I don't have a time frame for you. And if there's any way that we UNC can add it before they do, then perhaps there's a way we can roll it out faster. But right now, it's not there.
Okay.
All right. Next
Thanks,
question. Will we ever have the ability to see branch/role/competency and position numbers?
This is feedback we received right from the beginning, even before we put this in live during user acceptance testing, that this would be very useful for you. So we do plan on adding several additional fields. Since we're on the topic, I'll just name off some of the other things we're perhaps going to, some other feedback we have received, such as perhaps instead of job title, adding working title, because right now it's only displaying the job code description, which is the job title. We have received this listing the classification of SHRA, EHRA, position number, like you mentioned, competency, FTE, and you'll notice it shows primary name right now. So preferred name, switching over to preferred name is something we've heard too, and absolutely what you talked about with vacant positions. So.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
Next question. Will hospital positions show on org charts?
Currently, only if the employee has job data, UNC job data, they're going to show. So if they're healthcare employees, they will not show up on the org chart.
Okay, next one. Will we be able to see temp employees?
Yes, absolutely. If they are an active job, you will see them. The org chart updates nightly. So once their tenure ends, then that night a batch process runs, and the next morning you will not see them in the org chart.
All right, last one we have so far. Will affiliates, visiting scholars, unpaid interns, etc., show up in the org chart?
No, like I mentioned before, only if they have active job data will they show up. Affiliates do not show up at this time.
Okay.
All right.
Well, that's all we have so far, so get the typing, people. Some more questions.
Those are some great questions.
Yeah,
good questions.
absolutely.
We'll just hang out and what you think and type. Jackie will sing a little song.
Jackie does not sing at all.
We got to thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the question.
Thanks for attending. And it also doesn't have to be questions. If you have other feedback,
Yes.
Something that you want to see in there that's not in there, anything like that, let us know that as well. I can't promise that it'll happen, but we can add it to the list for sure. But if you don't mention it and nobody else does, it's probably not ever going to happen. So I think we'll wait 30 more seconds or so. I always say a minute, and a minute with no talking is just...
Yeah, it's like an eternity.
It's an eternity, especially when you're on air.
Those uncomfortable, awkward pauses.
Exactly. So I'm going to go ahead and flip to our last slide here. I'm not cutting off the questions. But if you have more questions after today, or you run out to CC Info, to the HR Reps page, and you have questions about information that's in the document, you can let us know. I've got some information here about how you can get in touch with us. If you've got questions or you've got, you just need more information, you can always go to ccinfo.unc.edu. And if you need more help, you can always go to help.unc.edu.
We do have another question.
All right.
So when we export to Visio, will we see all the way up to the chancellor?
If you export the level just below the chancellor, so you can export from the chancellor, but you're going to get thousands and thousands and thousands of results. If you export at the level of the provost or even a level down from that, you'll get up to the chancellor. It will take a considerable amount of time, and actually the system will ask you if you want to run it as a process or if you want to download it online, or if you actually just don't want to do it because that's not really what you meant to do.
Mm-hmm.
But you can export up to that. And one other thought about exporting to Visio, so you do have to save it as a CSV file. So you don't want to open it from that screen. When your browser gives you the option to open or save, you want to save the file, then open Visio, and then bring in the file to create an org chart. Is how you want to do that. You don't want to. It won't directly download into Visio.
And I'll say it's sort of related to the question. So for HR reps and OHR, you might have department security, say, on job data, and you only see the people in your division. However, with org chart, you can search for anyone throughout the organization. So you could search for the chancellor, absolutely. And when you export, it's going to export the person you're searching for and everyone below that, the peers, and then the supervisor. But when you import it into Visio, you can say you don't actually need all the peers in there or the supervisor. If you only want the direct reports and indirect reports of the person you're searching for, you can select them to be the highest level in the org chart in Visio, and then you won't see all that other, perhaps clutter. You'll only see that person and their direct reports and indirect reports.
Yeah, you have a lot more flexibility once you download into and open it up in Visio to move things around and change it around. Of course, keep in mind that if you change something in Visio, it's not changing it in ConnectCarolina. So if you move somebody around with their reporting structure, make sure that if they really need to be there, that you submit the EPARs to get them moved to the correct location.
Alrighty. Seems like no one else has anything to add.
No more questions?
No more questions.
Well, it could be that they're hanging on our every word.
Well, that's what I was thinking. But it has been 4 minutes. So I don't know. Give another 20 seconds here.
All right.
Feeling generous on a Friday.
There you go.
And once, just some, I guess, insider information. I mean, once we get some of these changes made that you're asking for, and the idea is if people think this is useful, we could roll it out eventually to managers, perhaps employees, if it's deemed useful. So you guys are getting a sneak peek into what could be available to everyone in the future. And what's nice is now you can sort of look and clean up your data so that it's ready and has all the appropriate information for prime time too.
Right. No more questions?
I think we're done.
All right. So again, there is additional information on the HR reps page. It's there now, that the guide for the org charts and understanding the reporting structure is on CC info on the HR representatives page under the HR option at the top. And this webinar will be posted there later today. If you just enjoyed listening to us so much and you want to do it on your ride home or something, you can certainly do that. If you have any other questions, definitely let us know, or if you need any help, help.unc.edu or 962-HELP. And I guess that's it. No more questions?
No more questions.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks.